How does a 2-year-old's innocent wave to an empty corner connect to a terrifying figure that would follow her for the next decade? Why do thousands of people in the world report seeing the same exact shadowy figure in a hat? What happens when someone finally gets fed up with years of hauntings and decides to confront a shadowy observer? Today, we test the believability of the Hat Man Stories, Volume 1.
Welcome to Believing the Bizarre,
Where we dive into the unknown and the unusual.
and tell you whether or not we find it believable.
That is right. Happy Tuesday.
Oh, wow.
This is now episode 251.
Yeah, it's a new, it's like the quarter has shifted.
Yeah, it's a whole new vibe. We're changing the podcast entirely. No
Yeah.
more rankings.
No more bizarre stories.
No more. Yeah, no. It's going to be just drama and sports. So we have covered this topic before, the Hat Man. You can go check out that episode.
Yeah.
So what this is a collection of Hat Man stories that were sent to us.
Oh, really? Okay.
So these are 4 listener-submitted Hat Man-related encounters.
From people that are listening to the show.
Yeah,
Possibly
these,
right now.
These are not Reddit. These were submitted to us via our website. If you go to believeinthebizarre.com, go to submit your experience. There's a form there, and that's how you can get your experience on the podcast. And that's what these folks did. And that's what you could do too. Before we get to that, though, I want to shout out our newest patrons. Thank you, Rock Fox. I like that. There might have been someone else that came in before this, but we'll catch you next week. Just a reminder, because some people have asked, our next batch of 2025 exclusive pins are going out soon. I had to order more bubble mailers.
Yeah, you got to do like a whole thing.
Yeah, the bubble mailers, that's what you put them in, so they're nice and safe. So I had to order some more of those. So there is a second batch coming of those, and so you get that if you join our Not tier, along with a hoodie and a shirt in a couple months. But Charlie, what else can that tier expect that is very new and very recent?
The Not tier can expect things like our theatrical reading.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
So that is a highly edited, fictional story about typically something kind of strange, bizarre.
But that's all over there on Patreon, so go check that out. But first, let's get into some Hat Man stuff. So before we get into the encounters, just a quick recap. I assume most people probably know,
Yeah.
but just to get it out there and say
Take
it again.
50 Benadryls to see him.
Yeah, and he'll be there. He's like, whoa, I think you should calm down. He's like, I'm a little more of a Tylenol guy.
I'm going to call 911 for you.
So he is this tall shadow figure with 2 typical characteristics. The hat, so like a wide-brimmed or like a fedora-looking hat, and then often he's wearing like a cloak, like some type of jacket or coat. But
Very Harry Potter.
You can't really tell because it's just like all black. It's shadow. It's spooky.
It's just like a black silhouette.
Silhouette. It's like a Hat Man silhouette.
Looks like Zorro.
So, he got the little mustache.
Yeah.
Some people say he's got red eyes. Some people say it's just all black.
I've heard white eyes as well.
Really?
Yeah.
That's spooky. And there's been mixed reports on whether or not he feels terrifying and evil, or whether it's just like a presence. Like you feel him there.
Almost like overwhelming, right?
Some people say it's almost neutral, but yeah, there's anywhere from terrifying dread to overwhelming to like just, yeah, he's there.
He's there.
He's definitely there.
Like me at a party. I'm there in the corner.
Yeah, he's there. You know Charlie's there. Just follow the Pokemon chat.
The faint smell and sound of Pokemon and Doritos.
And he is also tied to sleep paralysis, though not everyone, that's what he was referring to with the Benadryl. Not everyone has to be in sleep paralysis state to see him, but that is, opposite the hag. That is where a lot of people do tend to.
I was going to ask, is this just another version of the Night Hag?
It's just player 1, player 2. It's the different skin.
Oh, okay.
But that said, we're all caught up. We all feel good. We know the Hat Man intimately.
I know him.
Let's get to the stories. So our first encounter comes to us from Peeps in Colorado. Now, I'm assuming not like the little marshmallow.
Do you like Peeps?
I did when I was like 8.
I never liked them. But I know I've never done? I've never put them in the microwave. I've never had them. on graham crackers with chocolate,
Oh, I haven't
which is
either.
how marshmallows should be eaten, I think.
Yeah, over a fire, you're melting that peep. He's like, it's getting kind of hot, bro. We
Part
good?
of the head's like blown up.
Happy Easter. Well, okay. Peeps thought that they had a very unique experience until they heard our Hat Man episode. And this is kind of paraphrasing what they said. I'm not being a jerk here. But they're like, oh, I guess I have a basic ass unoriginal sleep paralysis demon.
Well, that's the thing about the Hat Man is why it's so prevalent
yeah.
is because many, 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 many people have seen it.
And we can't answer whether or not it's one entity or it's like,
I don't know.
there's Hat Men.
Hat guys.
Yeah, they're just the people keeping lids in business. Because I never see anyone at a lid store.
I'm pretty sure lids is our fronts. Yeah. But they don't wear that. Just the baseball cap, do they?
No, those are in the back.
Yeah, oh, okay.
That's the problem. Lids would probably make a killing if they sold fedoras.
Zora? Yeah. Fucking bunch of hipsters.
So after listening, Peeps decided to submit their own story, and here is their encounter with the Hat Man. Quote, it's not a super intense story, but for about 2 nights in a row, for the first and only time in my life, I experienced sleep paralysis. The first night, I had just drifted to sleep when suddenly I felt the falling sensation that you sometimes get right before you fall asleep. I turned so that my stomach was facing upwards, but I was physically incapable of actually sitting up, like my body was being pressed down with a weight. My eyes widened, and I'm pretty sure my heart stopped beating when I saw that in the corner of my room, directly in front of my bed, was a tall figure. He seemed incredibly skinny, despite the fact his coat flowed all around his tall body, and his long fingers extended through the bottom of the sleeves. His outline was barely lit by the dim red lights on my ceiling, and he was definitely too dark to make out any features past his silhouette. He was so tall that he had to bend his neck where the wall met the ceiling, and though his head was dipped, I could still make out the brim of his hat. He resided in the corner behind my door, so that if my door was open, his body would have been covered. However, the door was closed, exposed the entirety of his tall, slender frame. I froze and we stared at each other for no more than 10 seconds before he moved to the side and slid through the cracked door of my room into the hallway. His movement almost seemed like liquid, that it was one smooth motion, and he had left my room completely, almost like he was sucked into the slit of the door. It wasn't even a thought in my mind to follow him. I just sat in bed, unblinking and unmoving until my body forced me to sleep. The next day, I didn't mention it to anyone and tried to just forget about it, but by the time night came again, I was in bed and it was all I could think about. I turned on a lamp and tried to watch some Netflix until I eventually fell asleep. However, I woke up again later to the sound of my door creaking open and my cat's collar bell jingling as she bolted in as fast as her body would let her. In the same smooth motion, the tall shadow figure and his flowing trench coat slid around the door frame back into the corner of my room. At this point, my lamp had shut off automatically, so I was stuck in the same room as this creature in the same dim red lights. This time, I thought I froze out of pure fear instead of being in a state of paralysis. Once again, the shadow figure just stood there and watched me, but after maybe another 5 or 10 seconds, he started moving towards me. I gasped whatever air I had left and braced myself for whatever would happen next. Then he positioned himself to the far end of my bed frame, closest to my feet, where the wood came up maybe 2 feet above the mattress. He bent over where the ceiling started and peered over at me, this time only a few feet from my face. It was by far the most terrifying experience of my life, and I thought I'd never learn how to breathe again. Then suddenly, he walked or maybe even glided in a backwards motion, so he still faced me behind my door again and disappeared into the hallway. I didn't fall asleep the rest of the night and barely slept the night after, but I haven't seen him since, and thankfully it's been almost a year. I told my brother about this encounter a week or so later, and his eyes got wide as he told me he had the same exact experience at the same time as me, and described the same figure I had seen in my own room. We both mentioned that it reminded us of Slender Man, but after listening to the episode, I realized it was not in fact Slender Man coming to show me his new wardrobe. My theory on the Hat Man is that he's just a shadow figure, and the description is generic enough that anyone in a dreamlike state could easily picture him towering over them, kind of like a shared phenomena. I told my mom this, and she thinks I'm just saying it to make myself feel better. Unquote.
It's a very, very unsettling description of the Hat Man. The long, bent, almost like the... God, it reminds me of... This is such a pool. It reminds me of the Inquisitors from Invader Zim.
Okay.
Like how they're tall.
Now I have to find that video.
You can find it's the intro. It's easy.
No, I know.
But the long fingers too got me. But also, can we talk about how Peeps is sleeping in what sounds like an amphibian aquarium with the red lights?
With the red lights on?
Yeah,
It
exactly.
could be like our twinkle lights. They're just red. Or maybe
Probably.
or they just had a red, like...
Oh, but that's so ominous in itself. To me.
Yeah, the second night, I maybe would have turned that off and got like...
or like a white light.
I got a Winnie the Pooh night light or something. Just plug that in.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's it almost sounded to me extraterrestrial. I know we talked about the idea before. But
Just
what
like
if
the
it was?
watching.
Yeah, the watching and then...
Are you thinking there's almost like an interdimensional aspect to the way like he like slid through the door?
Yeah, like it just doesn't seem like it was really connected to our reality, which also could very heavily mean spirit as well. But the almost the observation of it made me think extraterrestrial.
I did not think that when we went over it, but I can't say that's not true. What do you think about the fact that Peeps and their brother saw at the same time? Do you think that's a shared experience? Do you think it's two of these things?
Yeah, that leans more to the idea of it not just being one thing, but like it taking on the mantle.
I like the theory that Peeps has where it's like it's such a generic shape
Yeah,
that it is easy to just imagine. It's not like everyone's picturing in detail the same like very, very specific.
because there aren't a lot of details. That's the thing. So that's a good theory.
I think Hatman likes it that way. He's
Yeah.
like, it's, go undercover.
But also, it's really weird too, because like the tall bent over is exactly what you described before, and that, oh God, imagine.
But yeah,
being
this
so
certainly
tall.
fits the Hatman phenomenon.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. It's just, oh man, it feels Hatman-y to me. I don't think I'd like to be observed like that, because you're in your like most vulnerable state at that point.
Yeah, like not only are you in bed asleep, but you're frozen.
Yeah. Have you had the sensation of falling asleep then jerking awake?
Oh yeah, I hate it.
I
'Cause
hate it too.
Yeah, I just
That happened the other night. I almost hit my wife as I go like that. And,
hit that elbow. I'm gonna catch myself. I'm like a cat.
yeah, no, I don't like that sensation.
All right, so let's move on to our second encounter, which took place from the 90s to 2009. So we're talking like
It's
decade
almost 20
here.
years. Oh, 90s. Well, I go
well,
from
if
90.
it's 90, I don't think it's 90. I think it's
All
like
right.
late to mid 90s too. Let's say 10 years.
Okay.
And takes place in Pennsylvania. And this is a Sophia story, which means what, Charlie?
It's anonymous. That means that's just the name that we give all our anonymous listeners. Male, female, they, them, doesn't matter.
Means I know who it is. But you guys don't know who it is.
I don't know who it is either.
We're going to create a new Patreon tier where we just dox all these Sophias. They'll never know. Except that that will be the way we promote it.
Yeah, let's do that. That's great.
So Sophia grew up in a significantly haunted house and experienced the Hat Man for years, basically about a decade, which is a very long time to experience something so creepy, in my opinion. So let's get into her story. Quote, as a disclaimer, I do suffer from sleep paralysis and had migraines every few months when I was a kid and a young teen, but I don't remember these coinciding with actual sightings. Several years ago, I came across a website that contained paranormal encounters. One of the sections was devoted to encounters with an entity called the Hat Man. This section stopped me in my tracks because up to this point, I was unaware that other people had experiences with him too. To be honest, I can't give an exact date or year for when everything started, but it went on until I was in high school, probably around 10th grade. While I had a really good childhood, and for the most part, I was a pretty happy child, I don't really remember a time when I didn't experience him or an unsettling feeling in my childhood home. I almost never slept in my bedroom all the way through the night as a child, and this pattern continued through my teen years. Even visiting as an adult, I had a difficult time sleeping in that room if my husband wasn't with me. Overall, I just didn't sleep much while in that house. My nights would go something like this. I would start the night in my room and would feel a heavy presence in there, along with the feeling of being watched. Sometimes I would see him standing by the door to my bedroom, a tall, dark silhouette with a fedora-type hat and cloak. During those sightings, I would cover my head with my comforter, and still slept that way until recently, and eventually get so scared that I'd close my eyes and make a run for my parents' room. Other times, I'd feel the heavy presence in the room and have the feelings of being watched, but he wouldn't appear until I made a run for it. Sometimes I would turn to see him slowly walking down the hall behind me and coming to a stop at the door to my parents' room. I don't know that he ever actually went in their room. He would slowly follow me, but didn't appear to be in a hurry. This went on for years until eventually I stopped sleeping upstairs. Most of the time, I'd choose to sleep on the living room sofa. At that time, no one else in my house was reporting anything weird, but later on, my parents did admit that they would experience some things in the house. However, most of those experiences were attributed to spirits of family members, so basically different hauntings. They never mentioned the Hat Man, and I didn't bring it up. The only places in the house that felt uncomfortable were the upstairs rooms, especially my bedroom and the basement. One day during high school, a friend and I were in the basement playing darts. She turned around and froze and asked me if I saw the shadow figure in the hat and the cloak too. Instead of responding, I just ran upstairs and she followed right behind me. I know for a fact that I never told her, or let alone anyone at this point, about seeing the Hat Man. It was the confirmation that I needed to know that this wasn't just all in my head. Several nights later, I was in my bedroom and I felt the heavy presence again. Fueled by exhaustion, I did something very brave and possibly stupid, and I just went off on him. I told the Hat Man to leave me alone because I was tired of not sleeping. After that, the house did still feel heavy at times, and I still couldn't sleep well in that room, but I seemed to have made my point, and that's where my story hopefully ends. The encounters with the Hat Man were something I never talked about. It's only been in the last few years that I've told a handful of people I really trust about my experiences, usually in very little detail. This is partly due to knowing how just naturally unbelievable it sounds, and partly due to how uncomfortable talking about him still makes me feel. Unquote.
Sometimes that's just what you got to do. You just got to unload on these spirits. You just have to really tell them they're not welcome and you can't be by you. And I'm not even kidding. That's just what you do.
She makes a good point when she's like, brave. I mean, yeah, possibly stupid, depending. Yeah. I mean, if it would have escalated.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think there is a certain level of bravery with that, though, because you are dealing with the unknown. It's
Absolutely.
Like, they're like, you got to punch a shark in the nose. Or when a bear comes, you got to stand your ground.
Depending on the bear.
Depending on the bear. But those are like things that people have researched, and they're like, it might not work, but it's like videos of what you should do. No one's like, well, if you run into a Hat Man.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Like, incredibly brave.
Or even like aliens,
Yes.
Like we don't get that type of comfort,
I think a good alien is dealt with a 45.
No, was it a pencil or what did she have?
Oh, it was like a statue in that
statue.
Movie. Yeah,
that was no one. No one makes it out alive. No one's safe.
You're safe, not anymore.
You're totally not safe.
I can't remember exactly.
I'll put the title here.
Yeah,
it won't help with the audio version. I'm just called No One Will Save You.
Okay,
I'm not going to do that to you guys because I know as a listener of podcasts,
you're screaming.
I'm screaming. No one will save you. It's got the girl from the Tim Allen show.
But I did want to make a point. I wish the friend hadn't said, do you see that shadow with the hat and the thing? I wish she just said, do you see that? And then they could have ran upstairs together and then maybe talked about what they saw. I just wish she wouldn't have fed the information.
Really?
Yeah.
I think for the list, now for us, it's very convenient. I think for the author, I think that's huge because there was obviously no bias. That'd be like if I'm experiencing something and you come to me and you're like, hey, do you see that exact thing that you've been experiencing? Like, there's no bias because it's not like they both had a first-time experience. Okay. Like, if you and I see a UFO
maybe I'm looking at it wrong. I don't know.
So, if you and I both see a UFO, and you're like, did you see that UFO with blue lights? And I'm conditioned to think it was a UFO with blue lights. Where if you're like, did you see that? But we're sharing a first-time experience. That'd be like if you always
She's always experiencing this thing.
And then a friend who has no experience came over and was like, hey, do you see that UFO with blue lights? That would be everything you needed to know to confirm that in your head.
I think I was looking at it from a first-time experience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because normally I agree exactly what you're saying because the confirmation bias. But just from the perspective of Sophia
She's
here.
been seeing it, so it's good that the friend did
So
say
someone new comes in.
That makes sense. Okay.
Because it would be, if it was more ambiguous, like, do you see that shadow over there?
Yeah.
Then it's like, am I putting this on her?
Mm-hmm.
Where she's like, yo, do you see the hat man? You know, with the hat and the cloak, and
The
he looks
hat
like
guy.
he's gliding.
Probably Zorro.
I appreciate that Sophia shared the story because, like she said at the end, like, it's not something she's really comfortable talking about.
Yeah. I think more people should try that technique.
Of just chewing them out.
Yeah. Well, that is a technique that you do to get rid of spirits in general, along with typically some like cleansing things. But that's like what you're supposed to do.
Yeah. She probably just hit a breaking point where, like, you're so tired. I mean, I got like 3.5, 4 hours last night. But like when you are so tired and so cranky, and it's like you just feel it again, you're like, no.
Yeah.
No,
That's enough.
Go away. I don't need you here.
Yeah, almost like a guy who can't take no.
All right, so that was Sophia's story. Let's move on to our third encounter. So this encounter is from Tori in Ohio. Not the Tories we knew. We knew two Tories.
Yeah, there was.
We won't go into their nicknames, but
No, we won't do that.
But I don't think this is either one of them. And this goes from 2003 to 2014. It's always ambiguous when you give us the years. So 'cause I think the next story we have, they put like one. Like it was 1 year.
1 year.
Or the first one of those
Or
two.
just random 2017, 2022.
Yeah. 5 states, 2 years. So Tori lived in a tiny apartment with her mom and dad when she was super young, like 2 years old. But then around that time, her mom got pregnant. So they moved to a house that she never felt comfortable in. And
Probably got a good deal on it.
yeah, it's got that Hat Man deal.
Yeah, that haunted Hatman deal.
Even now, though, Hat Man can't save it. It's still 7%.
It's still
like, I can work
250.
He's like, if I haunt upstairs and downstairs, I could probably bring it down to 6.25.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a deal.
It's not bad.
All right, let's get into this. Quote, we lived in our next house until I was around 7 years old. I'm 21 now, but I remember my hatred for that house. It had a finished basement where my brother's room was once he got a little bit older. My brother loved his room in the basement. He always went down there and was playing games, but I refused to go down there. Something about the basement just terrified me. I also wouldn't sleep in my own room unless someone was in there with me. The only room I'd be willing to sleep in by myself was the living room, only if the TV was on the couch, and my parents tried to believe this was just my way of trying to watch TV more, but honestly, something truly scared me about my room. My parents finally talked me into spending a whole night in my room. They put a nightlight on, they turned on classical music, they tried their best. So I started to fall asleep when I saw the man in the corner. Now, I don't necessarily call him the Hat Man, but he did wear a fedora-like hat and a long black trench coat. I ran downstairs to tell my parents, who, again, let me sleep in their room. We moved my room to every room in the house, but I would still see this man occasionally. It got to the point that I accepted that this random dark figure would just be in the corner of my room at least once a week, and I just stopped mentioning him. Thankfully, we ended up moving from that house in 2008. But the man in the corner followed me to the next house as well, and I just started seeing him more and more. It was becoming an every night thing. I'd roll over, and he would just be standing in the corner next to my bookshelf. As I got older, around 10 or 11, I started talking about him again. I would mention him to my friends at school. Most of them believed me and just would refuse to come to my house, while some friends just didn't believe me at all. I did have a specific friend who I'll call A, who didn't believe me. A and I became great friends despite her never believing anything that I said about the Shadow Man. A spent the night after school, and after we were sick of prank calling our other friends, we got out my old keyboard that my dad gifted me a few years prior. We started playing songs on it, just being silly and having fun, when one of the keys wouldn't stop playing. The key itself wasn't stuck, but we assumed that something was stuck inside of it or inside the keyboard, so we turned it off, but the note continued playing. The two of us were getting a little scared because the keyboard would not stop playing the single note, so I finally just took the batteries out of it, but it still continued to play. We came screaming out of my room, running towards my parents, who were obviously concerned. My dad went into my room to look at the keyboard, and of course, it wasn't playing when he walked in. The rest of the night, A and I were on edge, trying not to fall asleep. Eventually we did, but we were both woken up by the slamming of my desk drawers. We both jumped up and stared at each other and looked at the desk, which now had both of the drawers wide open. We grabbed all of our blankets and ran to the living room. My parents came out and tried to calm us down, but we stayed up for a few more hours watching every inch of the room. The next morning, A didn't mention anything that happened and just went home. When I saw her at school the next day, all she said was, "Your house is haunted." And we didn't really talk much after that. I started to talk to my mom about everything that happened and describing the man in the corner who I never really told her about. Mine is just saying that there was a shadow figure. She looked extremely shocked about my descriptions because apparently when we lived in the very first apartment, I would wave at the corner of the room constantly and giggle at it. When my mom would ask who I was waving at, I would just say, "The man." This freaked my mom out, and I learned it was the original reason why we actually moved out of that apartment. They found out that they were pregnant with my brother after they started looking for a new place. So I've been seeing the Shadow Hat Man since I was around 2. And in a weird way, this kind of brought me comfort because he's never hurt me and he's never really done anything scary. I continued seeing the Shadow Man for another year or so after the keyboard incident, but that was the only time he really did anything other than just lurk in the corner. I haven't seen him since I turned 13, which I always thought was weird. I honestly started to forget about him until I was listening to an episode of your podcast. I don't remember which one it was, but it was another listener's story where they saw a Shadow Man throughout their whole life, and the Shadow Man showed up at the hospital with them. When I heard the description of him, I got goosebumps, and a wave of emotion hit me. I had to share my experience with the Shadow Man or the Hat Man after hearing that story. Unquote.
Lots to unpack there.
Go for it. Here's the scissors.
It's weird that he stopped coming when she was 13. So I wonder why.
I know, that almost gives like poltergeisty,
But like reversed.
Yeah, like coming of age thing. I don't know. It could
Yeah.
be. I mean, I don't get guardian angel vibes from this at all.
No,
Like,
I don't either. That's weird. Maybe he was just like drawing off that energy of the youth, you know?
Maybe, like the idea where they say like children are more sensitive.
Yeah.
Like maybe she lost sensitivity as she got older.
Yeah.
Or it just like,
Which is not bad.
no, honestly, like all good. But like whatever peek through that window of paranormal she had as she got older.
Yeah, she's like, well, I'm just going to, without consciously doing it, just kind of closes.
She needs one of those like movies where like you get older and you don't believe in magic anything, and then that friend from the past comes back and you get pulled back into all the, the crazy thing. I think the Winnie the Pooh story with Ewan McGregor.
I think that's
It's my second Winnie the Pooh reference.
what it is.
I don't think she needs to experience this anymore. I think it's probably good that
I think it's probably good. Probably none.
This also means that she was 2 in 2003, which makes me feel dusty.
When I was in 2003, well, I was pretty young. We were like middle school.
The waving in the corner thing as a child, like that's so scary. I'll tell you this story. I was going to save it for Patreon, but I'll just say it really quickly now.
Okay.
So I was editing
Yeah.
like this
Mhm.
in my office, and I
Just
heard
like that.
heard my son crying, and I went in there, and he's been sick. He's still sick now. He has another ear infection, but he was like crying. I'm like, "What's wrong?" He's like, "You were peeking on me," and I'm like, "Huh?" It's like, "You were peeking on me," but he had to really go pee. So I pick him up, take him to the potty. He goes pee. Immediately, he's like better, and I'm like, "What was wrong?" He's like, "I had a dream that he's like, I fell down at school and no one helped me." And he's like, "What is a dream?" Like, okay, I'm like, well, I'm gonna circle back in a minute. So I let him down, tuck him in. I was like, so I was peeking on you.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, but it wasn't real. It was in the dream. I was like, thank God. Like, let's keep it that way. Keep it that way, bro. Could you imagine being so afraid of There's two angles. Imagine being a child and you're so afraid of your living room, you're so afraid of your bedroom that you can't sleep in it. And then imagine the flip side. You're a parent and you're trying your best to accommodate your child, because they said every room became her room temporarily.
Yeah.
So you're doing everything you can to accommodate your child, and every room is like, I'm terrified. I'm seeing something.
Haunted.
Yeah. Which, I mean, her mom like kind of hinted that there was stuff going on before.
Also, the friend. Like that's another
Yeah, the friend A.
Yeah, it's another hardcore.
The keyboard, it's weird because that's not the haunting stuff you typically associate with the Hat Man.
No.
Like, that's more like the drawers open,
yeah,
the keyboard
poltergeisty.
playing. Yeah, or just like a
ghost,
haunting.
Mm-hmm.
Where the Hat Man's more so like lurking, hovering, sleep paralysis type
It almost
stuff.
felt like he was like showing out for the friend.
He's like, oh, you don't believe in me, huh? Knuckle crack.
Or maybe...
Let's go, homie.
Or maybe, I guess circling back to the idea, maybe it was a guardian type. Maybe he didn't like the friend.
He didn't like A?
Yeah.
He's like, no, you ain't cutting it.
Mm-hmm. That's so weird with the piano holding out.
keyboard?
And then they took the batteries out. I'm like, what if it's just plugged in, though?
That's some Furby shit.
Yes, it is.
And credit to her mom and dad because, as we found out, they left the first apartment not because
Of the pregnancy.
it's because they were afraid of what she was seeing in the room.
Yeah.
Not to take anything away. It's easier to leave an apartment than it is to leave a house. Like,
Yeah, it's
selling a
still
house.
difficult, though.
Yeah, I mean, lease was probably broken.
Yeah,
or
but there are
whatever.
leases. You're not necessarily buying a house when you're getting a house. It could be a rental house.
That's true. I just mean like when someone owns a house
Yeah.
and like it's haunted, they're like,
Well, that's a good percentage, though.
I'm not even going to be hitting principal for 10 more years. Like, come on.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move on to our fourth story. This is from Morgan in Michigan
Morgan and Michigan.
and takes place in 2016. Quote, this is going to be a Hat Man-ish story. Disclaimer, I have no idea what this actually was. It sounds like the Hat Man on the surface, but you'll see. So this takes place in 2016, and I was 12 years old at the time and starting 7th grade. Around that time, I got my loft bed. They were really popular at the time, so I was pumped to have my own. After a month, I got my loft bed. I started having trouble sleeping. Initially, I just brushed it off, like I just got a new bed, and I figured that it would get normal. But what wasn't normal was the man that I started to see in my room almost every night. It started with little things, like going to sleep with my door closed and then waking up to it wide open. There was this time that I decided I wanted to sleep with my bedroom door closed. Prior to this, I'd always been nervous to do so. Being that this was a new habit of mine, I distinctly remember shutting it the night before. When this would happen, I just thought maybe it was my mom who opened it, maybe to check on me, so I never really brought it up or thought to ask about it. But after a week of this happening, I started locking my door at night. That was when I saw him for the first time. That night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to my door wide open with a tall man standing in the doorframe. I knew immediately that it was not my dad. My dad was much shorter. This man was easily over 6 feet tall. The man was actually more of a figure, which made it really hard for me to identify any discerning features. The only thing I could tell was that he was wearing a hat, almost like an Abraham Lincoln top hat, but it was shorter and a little less dramatic. I could also tell he was wearing some sort of long coat. My bed was facing the door, so when I'd roll over towards the door, my head would sit right above the ladder, giving me a gap to see through instead of looking through the rails of the bed. I remember turning over, seeing this man, and immediately just being stunned. I think I could have moved if I wanted to, but I just sat there staring. The minute this man entered my field of vision, I was still, frozen. Not a thought ran through my head. I just stared at him, and he stared back at me. I don't remember him leaving. I just remember feeling like I needed to close my eyes. I didn't feel anything malicious from this thing. I just felt its presence. I felt like he was there, and once I closed my eyes, it almost felt like he was moving closer. But oddly enough, I didn't feel anything negative coming from it. I felt safe enough to the point that I could actually fall back asleep. Sure enough, when I woke up the next morning, my previous locked door was not only unlocked, but wide open. I asked my dad if it was him, despite my certainty that it was not, and he told me that he had not been near my room while I was sleeping. He did say that he noticed my door was open. He assumed my mom had checked in on me. I asked my mom if she opened the door, and she gave me the same answer that my dad did. This experience would repeat itself for the next week. Every night, the man would show up again. Sometimes he was in my doorframe, sometimes he would get closer to my bed. Despite the absolute insanity of this, I never felt unsafe by this presence. I brushed it off as just weird dreams, and I kept it to myself. I didn't tell anyone else about it. Flash forward to mid-November. This was about 2 weeks after the Hat Man stopped his visits. At this point in time, I was a competitive dancer, and was at the studio 5 days a week. On our dance breaks, we would mess around, braid hair, watch YouTube, and sometimes just play creepy games. When Charlie Charlie was popular, we played that on our breaks, but at this point in time, the game Red Door, Yellow Door was very popular. If you don't know what that is, it's basically you lay down, close your eyes, and you chant Red Door, Yellow Door multiple times in a row. One of the people in your group is considered the guide, who will ask the person laying down different questions about their trance and what they're seeing. The person lying down will start to explore hallways and doors of different colors while the guide asks them what they see and how it makes them feel. Now, there's some warnings for the game. For example, if you see a clock or a room full of clocks, you're supposed to run away immediately, or they say that you'll be trapped in the room. There are other ones, like they say if you die in the trance, you die in real life, and things like that. So my friends and I are on dance break and playing this game like we'd done many times before. My friend Megan was laying down and was being put in her trance. The guide started asking her what she saw and where she was walking and questions like that. Everything seemed normal until she found a staircase in the middle of a room and decided to go down it. Suddenly, based on everything she was saying, she was inside my house. She says she's now in my kitchen and the only thing on the counter is our knife block. I'm basically shitting myself at this point because why does it have to be my house? An important thing to add is that Megan had never been upstairs in my house prior to this experience. When she would sleep over, she would always just stay downstairs. So that makes this next part very unnerving. She tells me she's walking up my stairs to the second floor of the house. She describes what she sees and starts pointing out in detail the second floor of this house that she'd never been on. She's describing everything eerily correct. She says someone is there with her next. She says the corner right outside my parents' room is where this person is standing. And at this point, I am absolutely freaking out. She starts to describe the man. She says he's tall, about 6 feet, wearing a long coat and a hat. He's just standing there staring at her. She said even though she can't see his eyes, she knows that he's watching her. I immediately turn into the guide and start begging her to wake up and bring her out of the trance. Megan woke up and claims to not remember anything she saw or anything she said to us. I had an unsettling feeling the rest of the night at dance and refused to play that game ever again. Nobody knew about my encounter with this man. And furthermore, Megan didn't even know what the upstairs of my house looked like. The next part of my story, though, is why I'm wary of calling this a hat man. My sister June is sensitive to the paranormal. She sees entities and figures as plain as you and I see the trees. She's always been like this, but was hesitant to talk about it until the last 4 years. She has a ghost, entity, or something that follows her around at all times that she calls Elijah. So in 2019, when she started telling me about this thing that always followed her around, I was curious. I wondered if there was anything attached to me in that way. So I asked her. She proceeded to tell me that a tall man wearing a long coat and top hat has always been around when she sees me. She said he's always with me, and while she can feel his presence, she says this entity is good at hiding itself. She told me she only sees him around when I first wake up or I'm about to go to sleep. All the other times of the day, she can feel his energy around me, but he's not visible to her. When she told me this, I almost jumped out of my skin. I was horrified. This thing that I saw all those years ago has always been with me. She said that she doesn't get a feeling of evil from this entity, just like I hadn't. I asked her the other day if she still saw this man following me around, and she revealed that now she just doesn't see him in the morning and night, but she sees him all the time. The entity has now revealed itself in full time, and June puts it as almost like he's getting more comfortable around her, implying that this thing can sense that June can see him as well. While she may be seeing him all the time, I still haven't seen him since 2016 when he visited me for a week straight. I don't know if this is a hat man or if it's just something else entirely, but truly, I get freaked out whenever I talk about it. Unquote.
That's intense. She's still being visited. Not visited, but she's still like...
It's almost creepier.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? With that he's around and she can't even tell.
Almost has this attachment.
There's peace of mind, I guess, if you're not experiencing it. Well, like it's like if you know I don't want to use this. It'd be like if I knew when you were gonna die, but you didn't know. Like you don't. You don't.
Yeah.
You can live your life
I don't
naively,
know.
not caring. Where I'm like, there's a number above your head.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, you want to hang out next week? You're like,
Well, I don't know if we might not have time for that.
You can push it forward. No, I'm not putting that out there. I'm just saying it's like that's what I mean by the convenient, like the peace of mind is that while someone else can see something about you, you can live carefree.
Yeah.
Just be naive and be like, okay, you say he's around. I don't sense him anymore. The red door, yellow door thing.
It's like red leather, yellow leather, like the tongue twister.
Yeah. That is like.
It's pretty cool.
I've heard of the game, but I've never heard
of that.
I've heard of the game, but I've never heard of like a legitimate. Like they were at a dance studio and she got transported to her friend's
almost
house.
like astral projection.
Kind
like
of.
Guided
Yeah.
astral projection.
Yeah. It's like I guess when you're close like it's not like she's never been there. It'd be one thing if she's never been to the house.
Right. But she's never been upstairs, and that's
as far as she knows. You know what I mean? Sometimes friends be creeping, you wake up in the middle of the night, you're like, I know where's the bathroom. I'm gonna look upstairs. Either way, it almost is like if her friend Megan knew about this experience, I could see girls teasing and being like, let's do this game and pretend like you're seeing that thing that she talks about. But she says she doesn't mention it. We can only take these stories at face value, you know?
Yeah. I did have a thought about that game. I was like, we should do that on like a live. It'd be kind of fun.
I'll guide you. You go in the trance.
Well, we do each other. Well, don't take that out of context.
So that is our story on the Hat Man. This is a unique episode.
Yeah.
Because we've already covered Hat Man.
We know what it is. It's kind of like when we did Skinwalkers Part 2.
I don't feel the need to rank these on our believability scale. I don't think anyone's lying.
Right.
I think here's probably the only thing we could debate, and I don't feel the need to. And if you want to, I'll entertain you. I think the debate is: was it a Hat Man or was it not a Hat Man? Not whether or not it's real or not real. Like I think everyone we talked to, everyone who submitted to us had a paranormal encounter.
I agree.
It's just, do you think it was the Hat Man?
Yeah. So like it's almost like a bit blanket believable. For me, it seems like it does lean into the idea that the Hat Man is an entity, not necessarily the same one.
Yeah, there's Hat Men,
Hat guys,
Hat dudes,
yeah,
Hat bras,
Hat 5 guys.
There's probably more than 5, unless they're delivering me. If he's bringing me a cheeseburger like that,
Wow, good job.
The last 2 stories were like, I'm experiencing a Hat Man-like entity, but I don't know if it's a Hat Man.
Yeah.
But then they perfectly describe the Hat Man.
Yeah.
They're like, it's this entity that's a shadow figure with a hat and a cloak.
Yeah. Well, maybe
they're all using the same language.
Yeah.
It's just
without even knowing really if it is the Hat Man. It's like, well, it is though.
I understand though. If I had an experience, there's like a certain arrogance is the wrong word. There's a certain like, I saw the Hat Man rather than like, I might have seen him. I saw this thing. That's probably how I would do it. I'd be like, I saw the shadow figure, and you'd be like, what do you look like? I'm like, well, he had a cloak and a hat. And you'd be like, bro.
It's like I'm in a coffee shop. I see Keanu Reeves. I'm like, I saw this guy. It might have looked like Keanu Reeves.
It could have been him. Yeah.
I think it's like that.
I saw the drummer for Rise Against at a coffee shop next to the venue.
Yeah.
And the only reason I had the courage to go up to him and ask him is because literally it was next to the venue and he was about to play. If I was just like randomly in like Kansas and I saw him, I'd be like, I'll take a picture, but I'm not gonna
post on Reddit.
Yeah, like is this him? And they're like, yeah, you should have.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think that's where that same concept comes for. I also thought it was funny that there was a dance break in a dance studio, and that's the part where they weren't dancing because dance breaks are where you dance.
I see. No, dude.
Yeah,
I think probably the reason that it's a silly theory, but I started this as a joke, but now the more I think about it, so I feel like for red door, red door, whatever it is, whichever door comes first, it's just McDonald's, whichever one comes first, like you need to have something to make the like something has to be distorted to make it truly work. I don't know if anyone out there has ever tried talking in a dance studio. Dude,
it's so echoey.
Yeah. It's so strange.
Really good for singing.
Dude, I just remember when we were trying to run lines in a dance studio. I wanted to blow my brains out.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's like
always
the quality of the dance studio.
You're
but
gonna
maybe
whisper it.
you're listening and you're trying to get in this meditative state or this trance, and just the sound is just circling everywhere in the dance studio.
There's an idea behind that sound can be hypnotic.
Yeah. I think you need to be in a dance studio for this game to work.
You might be right.
I think let's go to Gazetta. We'll go to the dance
They
studio.
won't understand at this point.
Dude,
We're too old now.
How many years after graduating would they allow us in?
I don't know.
I guarantee Chris still works there.
He does. I know.
Yeah,
he
we
does.
can get in. We can get in. We'll get in. We'll get a pass.
Sounds good.
I think these are all Hat Men experiences.
I do
Partly
too.
because I don't think the Hat Man is just one entity. If I believe that there's only one entity known as the Hat Man, and these are all like knockoff clones,
Yeah.
it'd be harder to fight for which one of these stories was the Hat Man.
Right. It's not like it's like there's like a Nike, the Hat Man, but like there's Schmikey and Schmooky and
Adidas.
not knockoffs.
I love Adidas. I like Adidas more than Nike.
I know you do. I agree with you. I think it's not really just one thing.
It's because of Nike, you have to have a slender foot. Like only Slender Man. See, like Hat Man is Adidas, Slender Man is Nike because you
That
need the
makes
most
sense.
slender ass feet.
But Nike is real.
So is Adidas.
Yeah. But
Oh, you're saying
Slender
Hat
Man
Man's
is
real,
not
Slender Man. Oh, well,
Gotcha.
so thank you everybody so much for listening to this Hat Man stories. Thank you everybody who submitted
Yes.
their stories.
Wouldn't do it without you.
I just recently had the idea, not this episode, but like a previous compilation I did of like in our email searching like what I'm looking for. So then I used to go one by one in all of our folders in
And
the
looking
drive
for them?
and see for keywords for like, is it Hat Man? Like I'd read like the first 4 sentences.
for like the creature features or whatever.
Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
like
bro.
combing through it's a big chore.
But I appreciate everyone who submitted. Thank you for the stories. If you want your paranormal story told on the podcast, go to believeinthebizarre.com. Go to submit your experience. As we always say, do not be intimidated by the form.
Yeah.
The form is your friend.
It looks small, but it can expand.
Don't even write in the form. Like we say, open a Google Doc or Microsoft Word, write your story in as much detail, paste that in there.
If you would like the listener compilation of the Hat Man, you have your own Hat Man experience, especially send that and maybe we'll do another one.
Yeah, and if you want to send us your story and we'll probably never see it and forget about it, email it directly to us.
That's true.
And we'll-
Unfortunately, that's true.
Unfortunately, yeah.
That's the way to get it lost.
And if you're enjoying the podcast and you want some extra content, like we mentioned at the top, there is Patreon. 4 different tiers, so much content, shout outs. We do quizzes, we do
Maybe a
games,
new
we watch
tier.
movies. And the other docs too.
Yeah.
I never
really
know.
like
I
that.
never know it's gonna send Charlie off likewise. And
It's really funny.
I'm always I get amped when I can make Charlie laugh. Not that he's not hard to make laugh, but it's
That's
just a good
true.
feeling.
Yeah.
But there's so much bonus content on there, behind the scenes life.
Yeah. We work hard.
Movies,
We work
watch
hard on that.
movies, theatrical reading. Again,
yeah.
shout out producer Ben, shout out Steph, shout out Charlie for editing it. If you like fictional stories, like we're big No Sleep fans, No Sleep podcast.
No sleep.
This is our way of pretending to be them for like one story
Yeah.
twice a year.
Or Liz Sauer too. Those are not technically real either, I think.
What?
Liz Sauer, Ghost in the Burbs.
Gotcha. Yeah. Your girl.
Yeah. And if you like the show in general, you can go on Apple and leave a review with 5 stars. That would be really helpful. We'd appreciate it a lot. Tell people about the show. And if you want to comment on this show specifically, you can go to Spotify and you can leave a comment. What did some people say last time, Tyler?
Here's a couple comments on Spotify from our last episode, which was The Changeling. We got Corey, who said, never grows, misshapen, potentially evil. Sounds like Stewie Griffin might be a changeling. And I'm imagining the episode where Peter tries to prove he's not their baby.
That'd be pretty good.
Emma says, I grew up reading Holly Black's reinterpretation of old Fae lore, so I love these episodes. Y'all rock.
Oh, I hope I did okay comparatively. That's actually really intimidating.
She just responded. She said, no, you didn't.
Oh, good.
And then Denise said, your guys' voices are so distinctive. I can't believe people get confused. Also, just listen to who always brings up Fae and who says they're not real. It'll make it easier.
Yeah, that's
That's facts.
pretty accurate. Yeah.
So thank you so much. As always, I'm Tyler.
And I'm Charlie.
And catch us next week on Believing the Bizarre.
A podcast as bizarre as you are.